Hey there everyone, AJ back again for the Mighty Gluestick channel. I make videos about Dungeons & Dragons lore full-time and have a huge collection of videos on monster ecology, fantasy world history, cosmology, character classes and magic items on my channel. If you like what I do, please consider becoming a member of the channel by clicking the join button down below or backing me on Patreon where you can get access to all the scripts I write for these vids, if you prefer to read what I'm saying. Also, I have a Discord server with an active community and of course, subscribe to me here for 2 videos per week and a live stream every weekend. Dragon Magic. Let's go there. First of all, there is an entire sourcebook of Dragon Magic called Dragon Magic, published in 2006 for 3.5 edition D&D, written by Rodney Thompson and Owen K.C. Steffens, which is pretty much the only resource you'll need on the subject. Well, I have mentioned dragon spells, rituals, and their magic items in old dragon magazines, but this sourcebook is 157 pages of solid info on the subject. In typical 3.5 edition style, it covers a whole lot of territory in the game. So with this book, you can run a complex dragon-centric campaign. I'll try to cram as much of it into this video as I can, and I should add the resource is generic enough to fit into homebrew campaigns or established settings and is easily updated to 5th edition. So I'll talk about how to do that as well, including some thoughts I have on the difference between 3.5 and 5th edition. Let's start off with the Draconic bloodlines. These are members of humanoid races who have a heritage of dragon parentage. But what is really interesting is that specific dragons have a tendency to favour certain races over others, giving rise to subcultures of these draconic hybrids. Gold dragons favour halflings, giving rise to the Glimmerskin halflings, while black dragons tend to forge alliances with lizard folk, and blood rights result in vile-tooth lizard folk populations. See, dragons are magical beings, and while metallic dragons do usually take humanoid form, the silver dragons are particularly known to live in plain sight in human populations, often choosing isolated villages and giving rise to the silver brow humans, for instance. The chromatics don't bother taking on humanoid forms usually. They don't have physical relations with them either. The crossbreeds are more often the result of alchemy and divine rituals, literally a mingling of the bloodlines. Blue dragons tend to live in the same territory as hobgoblins, and we find after many generations the rise of sunscorched hobgoblins, while the orcs live in hard, cold environments, and their proximity to white dragons results in frostblood orcs. Green dragons and elves, copper dragons and gnomes, red dragons and dwarves, and so on. I think it makes logical sense that in a fantasy world where these things are possible, dragon-blooded subraces are inevitable, and thanks to their supernatural strengths, they are going to slowly rise to a fairly dominant position, surviving where others would perish. Also, these subraces are not automatically allies of the dragons. A prime example is the Fireblood dwarves, who were originally enslaved dwarves held captive by red dragons, endlessly toiling to mine gold and gems for their dragon hordes. Eventually, they broke free and have been implacable foes of dragons ever since, with special abilities perfectly suited for fighting dragons, inherited from their violent red dragon side. The Frostblood orcs get their heritage from hunting down white dragons and the warriors drinking the dragon's blood. These races don't look overly draconic, but they have certain features that set them apart as a distinct subrace, which are clearly evident to other dwarves and other orcs and so on. In campaigns with a heavy draconic element to the stories and events, it makes sense to give specific character development options for players to fine-tune their player characters who have a lot of contact and experience with dragons over the course of their adventuring careers. In 3.5 edition, a lot of emphasis is placed on slowly unlocking character features and abilities over time, in small bits, often with prerequisites that really lock a character into the selection tree. So on the surface, the edition seems to have loads of special options, a dizzying array of feats and specialty character classes, prestige classes and so on. But in actual play, you'd have to have you'd make a decision fairly on to follow a specific path to unlock the character, ultimately, that you wanted to play. 5th edition probably gets fairly undue amount of shit from stalwart 3.5 edition players, and I suppose Pathfinder players, but it's just sour grapes over something that is kind of a bummer about 3.5 edition rules being fixed. In 5th edition, your choices for background, character class, feats and subclass really advance you quite far along what you would have taken much longer as a process in earlier editions. So in 5th editions, you can make the character you want to play and get to play that character with all the cool abilities and flair in a much earlier stage of the campaign. This is much more fun and actually supports a far more diverse range of game styles and options, so it's easier to roll up a mid-level character for a one-shot, with their special character class options fully armed and operational. 3.5 edition gives a slew of class features, feats and racial class features that in 5th edition could be handled with one feat package and probably a subclass, with no need to feel like you're just buying half-assed requirement feats before you get to do the cool stuff you made the character for. So what I'm saying is, if you pick up this book and want to make a special racial subgroup, handle it with a custom background and 2 or 3 features from that, let the player choose a character class, swap out something from it for a racial feat package which allows you to pick and choose stuff from the sourcebook all in one go. Don't make players jump through hoops or force them to play through a campaign before they even have the character they wanted to play. It sucks. This is one reason why 3.5 encouraged players killing everything and leveling up as fast as they could, which actually makes it more difficult to run certain types of stories. I don't blame players for being murder hobos, I blame decades of flawed game design, and I'm not going to shy away from saying it because I was there, Gandalf, 3,000 years ago. Anyway, there are many big ticket features that any dragon-blooded adventurer wants. Wings, breath weapon, natural damage resistance, supernatural immunities, dark vision, claws and shapeshifting, with a bit of magical power and possibly spell resistance. It's perfectly fine to include a lot of that in a feat package, but perhaps say, look, dragons take a long time to mature, and while you do have these little dragon wings, it's going to take you a lot of practice and strength training before you can grow large and strong enough to actually fly. So you can maddeningly flap your wings and fall, slow your fall to begin with, then you can manage a glide, and then you can actually fly. The character has all the drawbacks of wings, but they get the fun of learning how to use them throughout their adventuring career, which is also fun for people playing with them as they get to see the slow flowering of the draconic powers as well. In the Dragon Magic sourcebook, you can find options for a Paladin of Bahamut who rides a dragon steed horse, which is its own draconic heritage. The book also has Dragonfire Adepts, who are those who devote themselves completely to the draconic side of their nature, so it basically is their character class. Okay, Dragon Magic. I'll quote directly from page 59 of the book here. More than any other creatures, dragons are intimately tied to the primal forces of magic. Even the greatest arcanists only scratch the surface of what a dragon can do in that arena. What it achieves easily with magic will take many mortal lifetimes to master. In essence, dragons are created from a blend of magic and the most basic elements, bonded powerfully to the magical world. Just as an individual magic item or locale might be a focal point for magical energies, dragons are focal points for the flow of magic, living, breathing conduits between its raw potential and the rest of the world. Therefore, it's no surprise that dragons inspire a wide range of magical traditions. Whether the spells, powers, invocations, and other options in this book represent mortal attempts to mimic the innate talents of dragons, or are traditions created and taught by dragons, is immaterial. Scholars agree that many spells and magical abilities indeed originated with draconic lore, though most have been diluted over the years to the point where they are mere shadows of the magic wielded by dragonkind. However, some students of magic dedicate their lives to learning new ways to emulate the awesome powers of dragons, sometimes ways that even the dragons never imagined. This book covers spell knowledge used by, invented by, or owing its existence in some other way to dragons, as well as ways you can use their Dragonfare aura, and in 5th edition I suggest you extend this to their regional and lair effects. Get creative. Plus the book also talks about other creatures forming pacts with dragons, gaining magical powers in exchange for plenty of gold and jewels. Dragons are masters of spells that use more than one school of magic at a time, something that is remarkably rare in humanoid spellcasting. They're also really good at polymorph magic, which is why I don't correct players' assumptions that chromatic dragons not being able to naturally polymorph, because they can then bushwhack them with chromatic dragons just using a spell or magic item to accomplish exactly the same thing. Preferring not to polymorph is not the same as not being able to polymorph at all. Okay, let's look at spells in the book, and I'll add in the spells from the Draconomicon, also a 3.5 edition sourcebook, all about dragons and the logical companion for the Dragon Magic book. So, briefly as we can, note the grand sounding names of some of these spells. I really love them. Adoration of the Frightful, level 3, radiates a 60-foot aura that causes fearful creatures to shy away from harming you and they become friendly towards you. So basically mass charm scared creatures. Animate Breath basically turns a breath weapon effect into an animated construct thing able to move and attack under command, kind of like a flying sword. Arcane Spell Surge speeds up magic flow through the dragon's body, allowing them to cast spells faster, so it's a meta-magic effect. Aspect of the chromatic dragon, restricted to evil-aligned casters, they grow in size and polymorph into an aspect of Tiamat. An aspect of the platinum dragon is restricted to good-aligned casters, and they grow in size and polymorph into aspects of Bahamut. Aura of Terror, an enhancement or replacement for the dragon's Dragon Fear aura. Blinding Breath potentially permanently blinds victims who look at the breath attack that flares brightly, and Breath Flare is a lesser version of the Blinding Breath that just happens to temporarily stun them. There are a few other breath weapon spells, one which adds the breath weapon energy to the dragon's blood, so wounds immolate weapons and release gouts of fire and such. There's one that uses the breath weapon to dispel magic in an area. Burst of Glacial Wrath is an interesting spell. It freezes creatures caught in a 30-foot cone, doing 1d6 cold damage per level of the caster, but can't reduce creatures to less than -9 hit points, so they basically freeze solid. It petrifies them in that way, which actually makes it more difficult to restore them back to life if they've been melted again beforehand. Call of the Twilight Defender summons a dragon spirit embodied in the form of assembled natural materials, stone, wood and such, called the Twilight Guardian. It fights like a golem or can expend its energy to heal the caster on contact and then collapses back into rubble. Channel the Dragon provides a breath weapon and special defense of a specified dragon type, either copper, red, silver, white or green. Curse of the Elemental Lords looks a bit like an elemental phantasmal force, but simply leaves the victim vulnerable to a type of elemental damage. Also, it's a curse, not a magic effect, so it needs a remove curse, not a dispel magic, to end the effect before the 24-hour duration ends on its own. Detect Dragon Blood is like Detect Evil, but for draconic creatures. More details are revealed the longer the spell is maintained. Draconic Polymorph has limitations on how many hit points and hit dice the new form has, but that form has its strength and constitution increased. A Dragon Eye Rune is like a permanent enhanced arcane mark that allows the caster to target it with divination magic, and it basically is a GPS that can locate itself 3 times per day. Innovating Breath adds negative energy to the caster's breath weapon. Obviously these are spells that are cast by dragons that can breathe fire and stuff. Ethereal Breath causes the breath weapon to phase into the border ethereal plane. Hiss of Sleep, probably a precursor to the sleep spell. It works the same way, but only on creatures that can't see the caster or who have rolled a successful save against the caster's frightful presence. Imperious Glare concentrates the frightful presence of the caster into a gaze attack directed at one target per level of the caster, as long as they're within 30 feet of each other. Least Dragon Shape polymorphs the caster into a pseudo-dragon. Lesser Dragon Shape polymorphs the caster into a young red dragon. Eyes of the Oracle looks like the echo image from the Chronicles of Riddick. The caster gets glimpses into the near future, giving a bonus to armor class and dex saves, and automatically wins initiative. Ferocity of Sanguine Rage this is a freaky spell that causes blood to spurt from the eyes and swirls of glowing red energy, increasing the caster's combat abilities. In 5th edition this would be advantage on all combat rolls for 1 round per level of the caster. Firestride Exhalation, caster exhales a 30-foot cone of fire that they can teleport to a position inside that cone of fire undamaged by it. Form of the Desert Hunter, the caster is polymorphed into a brass dragon hybrid called a Dragon, looking very much like a brass were dragon. Glorious Master of the Elements is like an elemental prismatic spray from the fingertips, which has oddly untyped damage just listed as energy damage, that gets cumulatively more damaging the more times it strikes a target in a row over 5 rounds, so it's kind of like Witch Bolt. Haze of Smouldering Stone is like an aura of micro meteors that blast out in a cone to pummel foes and also provides some fire resistance. Horde Gullet is a weird spell that creates a second sort of pocket dimensional space in the form of a second stomach that the caster, hopefully a dragon, can use to store and transport objects inside themselves up to 100 pounds or 100 cubic feet that are swallowed or regurgitated all at once. Justice of the Worm King creates brilliant yellow spikes of light around the caster's body that deal retaliatory damage to attackers. By the way, all of this is available on the script on Patreon, and I'm going to make it publicly available so you don't have to be a paying patron to access this, because I realise it's a big list of things that you'll need to look at. Kiss of Draconic Defiance is a powerful spell, very much sought after. It is essentially a concentration-maintained anti-magic zone centered on the caster, releasing white ring pulses of dispelling energy, disrupting other magical effects. Lord of the Sky surrounds the caster with a black mist with bolts of lightning, provides flight or increases flight speed by 10 feet per round, also provides mini lightning tase attack each round, which slows down enemy flyers, and the spell can be totally expended with a full lightning bolt discharge as well. Maddening Whispers is an insidious mind-affecting spell with various optional results. It can instill hysteria, panic, violent hallucinations, or stupor. It only works on if the target's one creature per level of the caster can't see the caster, or they've already saved versus the frightful presence or are unconscious. It won't work on them as well. Superior Magic Fang provides a bonus on all natural weapon attacks equal to +1 per 4 level caster levels with a maximum of +5. Magic of the Dragon Heart, only useful if for those with Draconic feats and abilities. It basically bumps up the existing abilities to the next threshold. Mark of the Enlightened Soul adds good energy to spells being cast, which can affect evil creatures in various ways. Mesmerizing Glare is the classic spell that the dragon locks eyes with the target to keep them staring into the caster's eyes in a trance for 1 round per level. Up to 1 creature per level of the caster can be entranced simultaneously. Mind of the Labyrinth rebounds mind-affecting spells and confuses the caster of those spells as per the confusion spell. Passage of the Shifting Sands turns the caster's body and everything they're carrying into a blinding, obscuring sand cloud with about the normal size that they would be, and they can fly along at 40 feet per round, basically like the Sandman from Spider-Man. Path of Frost is basically like a grease spell that creates a slippery path of frost in front of the caster. Primal Hunter gives advantage on strength type checks with when in combination with other primal type spells. It also provides an uncanny dodge. So Primal Instinct gives advantage on initiative and survival rolls and extends all knowledge skill checks if the caster is Draconic, plus grants that uncanny dodge if combined with other primal spells. Primal Senses gives advantage on sensory checks and blind sense if the caster is Draconic. Primal Speed gives advantage on dexterity rolls and uncanny dodge effect if it's combined. Razor Fangs increases the odds of a critical strike with 1 damage type the caster can inflict with their natural weapons, so piercing or slashing usually. Rebuking Breath provides a turn undead power combined with the caster's breath weapon. Rot of Ages surrounds the target with swirling filth, causing them to become nauseated and poisoned. Scintillating Scales adds a constitution modifier to the caster's armor class for the purpose of deflecting spells, while mundane attacks have their armor class decreased by half that modifier amount. Sharp Tooth increases the damage inflicted by 1 natural attack of the caster as though they were a size category larger and older. Soul of Anarchy infuses the caster with chaotic energy. Soul of Light infuses the caster with radiant energy. Soul of Order infuses the caster with lawful energy. Soul of Shadow infuses the caster with negative energy. These are all spells which are quite mysterious to modern spellcasters. Stunning Breath adds bludgeoning concussive force to the caster's breath weapon. Touch of the Blackened Soul adds a heavy evil taint to the caster's magic, making good aligned creatures save with disadvantage and dealing some extra damage to them. Trance of the Verdant Domain, green glow emanates around the caster and lashes out at the enemy, overwhelming them if they have a weak mind, and they have to basically save versus being stunned. Undying Vigor of the Dragon Lords provides 5d6 hit points, healing, and can convert a single spell slot to add more healing energy, adding 1d6 healing per slot level. This is not divine energy, so it also works for undead spellcasters and is a very, very sought after spell. Vision of the Omniscient Eye causes the eyes to glow and provides advantage to any perception checks. Wing Blast creates misty and functional wings that can be expended to blast wind or fog at an area. Wing Bind is like a web spell that's quite effective against flying creatures that they can be cast on the wing. Wings of Air, less relevant in 5th edition, it would provide advantage on dexterity checks involving flight ability. Wreath of Flames, surrounding the caster in white hot flames that do 1d6 fire damage to adjacent enemies and add fire damage to physical attacks. Dragons also have a few psionic manifestations, with the gem dragons being very proficient with, and there are a range of powers that are essentially meta magic for dragon breath weapons on top of those which are listed in those spells. They can change the damage type, shape it, take on facets of Tiamat's or Bahamut's special breath weapons, have it last longer, and add other debilitating effects to it. Those with dragon blood or a pact with a powerful dragon can also learn draconic invocations, kind of like warlock powers, such as enhanced sight, sprouting wings, charming other creatures, and so on. Proper warlocks have their own invocations as well. Then you have powers for individuals who meld their soul to that of a dragon, and here we get some more insight into dragonkind. And I quote from page 82, "The soul energy of dragonkind burns more brightly than in perhaps any other kind of creature. Historically, even the most skilled meld shapers had found themselves incapable of channeling pure draconic soul energy. A rare few characters, though, tap into their own draconic heritage to shape the arcana energy composed entirely of the souls of dragonkind. Those without draconic heritage of any kind just can't use any soul meld powers with dragons. It would literally burn them out like an overloaded fuse." Skipping over dragon aspects and dragon pacts and draconic companion spirits, we get to the magic items finally. Again, I'll try to be as brief and concise as I can. The main difference between these items and ones found in old dragon magazines is, well, you'll see. Amulet of Fearsome Might. I've talked about this one before. It's a bronze necklace formed in the shape of a roaring draconic head embedded with rubies, sparkling rubies for its eyes, and it doubles the range of draconic beings' frightful presence. Cloak of the Mysterious Emergence is a multi-layered silk cloak with scales from the dragon Veratrix, which creates a portal in the form of a spectral dragon maw. The wearer steps into and steps out of a similar spectral maw at their destination. It has 3 charges of a 120-foot dimension door, or all 3 charges can be expended to teleport 120 miles. Dragon Slayer claws are heavy dark metal blades that fit snugly over the wearer's own claws. They inflict an additional 1d6 damage on a claw attack if the target is draconic. It's an extra 3d6 damage, so they're basically dragon slaying. Elixir of Blindsight is a blood red liquid with like sort of a watery syrup that's specifically for creatures with blind sense that enhances it to full blind sight. Ring of Draconic Zeal is an ivory ring carved to look like interlocking dragon scales. It roars when activated and grants the wearer an additional melee attack during the round. There's a far more powerful version which boosts up to 6 additional attacks in a round, and these can be activated once per day. Rod of Dragon's Blood is a 5-foot long dusty red rod carved from an inscribed dragon bone. It leaks dark red blood when activated and allows the wielder to recast a low-level spell that they cast last round without using a spell slot. Draconic beings can also reuse spell-like abilities in a similar way. More powerful versions of Rod allow the reuse of more powerful spells. Rod of the Dragon Heart is an iron shaft about 1 foot long with a small cage at the top. Within the cage is a purple crystal shaped like a dragon's heart. When its bearer is engaged in battle, fleeting apparitions of tiny dragons appear in the air above the rod of the dragon heart, up to 10 times per day, but only if the bearer has half their hit points or more. Enemies within 30 feet must save versus being frightened. Shield of the Winged Crusade is a heavy shield of dull red metal covered in scales. It buzzes loudly when activated, instantly shifting the bearer 10 feet out of the way of an attack and providing advantage on dexterity saving throws. Sword of the Great Harrowing is a longsword imbued with sentience and a seething hatred for all dragons. The blade and its bearer seek out dragons to behead. The sentience only serves wielders who actively hunt down dragons. It's a wide-bladed, long, glowing longsword with a fang-decorated crossguard and ruby in the pommel. When it powers up, it burns bright red, and this swirl of crimson energy spirals around the wearer and the sword and the dragon that they're fighting. It is a dragonbane weapon that drinks the dragon's blood and has powers to remove fear and absorb energy attacks. Tailbands of Impact is 3 rings that attack with a tail. Equipped with the tailbands of Impact is considered adamantine and magical, plus the wearer can apply their strength modifier to the damage. Tome of the Wyrm is a leather-covered grimoire with binding hinges and a backplate made of dark iron. An embossed glowing eye with a slitted pupil adorns the cover. The eye snaps open when the bearer saves against frightful presence or is attacked by a dragon. It has a cumulative effect on the caster who holds it in hand during combat with a dragon, providing a bonus that grows each time a spell is cast against that dragon, limited to the bonus equal number to the highest spell the caster can cast. It also records all the details of the battle on its pages. The Vial of Explosive Breath is a smoky crystal vial closed with a golden stopper capped by a faintly glowing piece of clear quartz. When it shatters, destructive magical energy explodes outward, very much like a dragon unfolding its wings before dissipating into the air. This energy burst, kind of like one of Gandalf's fireworks. It's a magic thrown grenade with a 20-foot blast radius, doing 66 damage of some energy type matching a dragon's breath weapon. Dragons can also craft their scales into enchanted items. There's a big section of the book on these, but those are mainly of interest to humanoids. They fetch a very good price and add nicely to a dragon's hoard if it's selling these etched scales, which it can produce itself. Dragons have a very long history. On the world of Toril, it stretches back 30,000 years, so there are many items, lairs, temples, dungeons and ruins that hold powerful magic items made by or for their species, which have withstood the epic span of time since their creation in one of the periods of dragon dominance. Dragons used to rule the greatest territory of Faerun, and their ruins still shape the landscape in some places long since overgrown, eroded, and in some cases built on top of. Dragons spend far more time than most people realize searching out pockets of their lost lore and artivist. When they find something like a full set of dragon wing armor or an ancient dragon spirit trapped within a huge gemstone for thousands of years, word spreads and reputations grow with a complex and mysterious draconic civilization. Adventurers who stumble across rich findings of draconic magic and items are most certainly going to attract a lot of very powerful attention unless they are very careful. Whew, we covered a lot of ground, but as you can probably tell, I was just scratching the surface of the incredible depth, mystery and power of dragon magic, a subject that many spellcasting races have spent thousands of years studying, sometimes recklessly and disastrously. Please hit the like button if you made it this far, subscribe if you like what I do, check out my Patreon for all the full scripts for these videos, particularly this one, buy some sweet merchandise from my Teespring shop, wear your geek with pride, and as always, thanks for listening, and I'll be back with more for you very soon.